Read my last message.
You'll need to unlock your iPhone first.
Hey Siri. Text Jekka.
What do you want to say?
I don't know what you said because I can't read the message.
Your message to Jekka says, I don't know what you said because I can't read the message. Send it?
Yes.
Done.
Okay, hopefully I'm somewhat in frame. I dropped my phone, what I normally use to control the position of the camera. So now I'm just having to do it manually on the tripod and hope for the best. It's also a very small window. It's not window, but a screen viewfinder. There we go. So it's a square and not, a rectangle like it will actually be when I look at the footage. So we're gonna go with it. So sorry. All right, hello. Welcome to my third quarter wrap up. So we're gonna be talking about all the books I've read in July, August, and September. And it's actually been a pretty good reading month for me. Up until the summer, I had only had one 5-star read, and that was way back in January. But this quarter, I had not one, but 2 5-star reads. So it's been a good reading session. Normally, I go just in order of how I read them, but this time I think I'm going to do group them into ratings, so best to worst. So let's get to it. So let's start with the best first, with the one that I think is in the lead for being my favorite book of the year so far, but we only have 2 months left, so who knows. But that book is Damsel by Elana K. Arnold. Hang on, Alexa's sending me a message. Alexa! What's the message? Alexa. Read message. Hold on. I'll be right back. I hope this doesn't move. If I don't knock over the bookcase first. Okay. Alexa, answer. Hello?
On his way.
What?
Hold on a second. Alright. Do I need to come home?
I mean, only when the people get here to let in.
Okay. I just didn't know if you needed the phone.
Well, I mean, I can do it now, but...
Okay. Okay. Alright, look. I figured it out.
I see that. Does that mean I can call you on here too?
Yeah, you should be able to. You should be able to tell it to call me.
Okay.
Alright, well, I'll be home shortly.
Okay.
Alright.
Bye. Okay. Hopefully it didn't move too much of the dogs running through. Guess they thought we were doing something exciting. You know what, let's just start over. So we're gonna go from best book to worst book, not so good books. So first up is the book that I think is gonna be, as of right now, my favorite book of the year. We'll see if it gets beat out the last 2 months that we have left. But that book is Damsel by Elana K. Arnold. It is the right of every prince of Harding to slay a dragon and rescue the damsel that is to be his bride before he is allowed to take the throne as king. No one questions it, for this is the way it has always been. The most recent rescued damsel has no memory of herself or her life before she awakes in Prince Emery's arms. She knows only what the prince tells her to be true. Even her name, Amma, was given to her by the prince. As their nuptials draw near, Amma must uncover the truth about herself and her prince before it's too late. This book is not for everyone. It seems that you either love it or you hate it. I loved it. I loved every minute of this book. It's a very slow, dark, meandering, twisted fairy tale with dragons. So there is no plot, and the mystery, if you want to call it that, really isn't a mystery at all. It's apparent from the very first page what's happening, but that in no way detracts from the story of this book. And the writing was just absolutely beautiful and compelling, but not in a lyrical or flowery sort of way. So I would not akin it to like Erin Morgenstern or Madeline Miller, but there was just something so intriguing about the writing. It felt as if the words were slowly pulling you down this lazy river, going deeper and deeper into the woods as it got darker and darker, and then it all ended with such satisfaction. Ugh, I loved every minute of this book. Again, it is not for everyone, and if you read this book based on me loving it, chances are you're gonna judge me really hard. But I loved it. I really, really loved it. It is listed as YA, but there are definitely adult themes in here, which is a lot of the problem that people are having with it. Is not necessarily the book or the story, but the marketing of it, and I can absolutely understand that, and I agree with it. I don't think it should be a YA book, but it is, and there are plenty of content warnings to look into if you need to do that. Anywhere from all forms of abuse against women, as well as cruelty to animals, and I'm sure a smattering of many other things. So, like I said, it is a very dark story, but I loved it. Ferdinand, please don't hit the tripod. Go lay down, please. Go lay down. Go lay down. Good boy. Up next, we have The Whispers by Greg Howard. 11-year-old Riley grew up hearing the story of the Whispers every night from his mother. The magical creatures who live in the woods and will grant you your heart's desire if you leave them tribute. Riley wants nothing more than to find his mother, who went missing 4 months ago. So he and a friend go on a camping trip to find the Whispers to ask them to bring his mother home. Again, 5 stars. It's a very moving, multi-layered book that has an ending that really, it packs a punch. I'm not an outwardly emotional person, but the ending of this book had me full on, misty-eyed, on the brink of flowing tears. It was just wow. It's a story of Riley learning to navigate through grief and family trauma, while at the same time trying to come to terms with his sexuality in a rural, conservative Christian community in the South, which can be a very difficult thing to do. So this is a middle grade, and while I absolutely loved it, it's not without its faults. There were parts of the story I felt as if the author put in the story solely meant to be towards the adults he knew were going to be reading the book, instead of targeting to his audience of children, which is what the book is marketed as. I mean, some of this may just be me nitpicking, but it was a little iffy sometimes. So, for instance, he felt the need to have Riley explain to us how Xanax makes you feel when you take it, even though Riley himself doesn't take it. And he had Riley describe a commercial for Viagra, even though Riley calls it the kissing pill. You know, it was just kind of like, it wasn't quite necessary unless you were specifically speaking to the adults you knew were reading the book. And, I mean, I guess he could have chosen to do that to solidify Riley's innocence in the way that he was describing these things, but I really didn't think that it added anything to the plot, nor to Riley's character development. So honestly, I think it should have just been left out. But other than a few little qualms like that, I really, really enjoyed this book. I really loved it. For Dan, stop licking. And then we have When Women Were Dragons by Kelly Barnhill. We follow Alex Green through her life as she examines the impact made on her by the mass dragoning of 1955, when hundreds of thousands of American women spontaneously transformed into dragons. So I actually didn't find out about this book through BookTube or any kind of book site or bookstore or anything like that. I actually found out about it through an artist I follow on Instagram. So they were commissioned, I assume by the publisher, to recreate the cover of this book in thread, and it was stunning. It was absolutely stunning. So through that post, I learned that Barnhill was coming out with her debut adult novel, and I was so excited because she is actually the author of one of my favorite middle grade books, which might actually be a favorite book in general, which is The Girl Who Turns the Moon. I could not wait to get my hands on this book when I found out about it. And it certainly did not disappoint. The first half of this book was mesmerizing, and I devoured it. I think between this book and Damsel, that feminist dragon stories are my new favorite thing. So if you have any recommendations at all, please send them my way. I especially loved the intermittent science documents, court documents that were sprinkled in between. I really enjoyed that touch. And while the first half of the book focused on white, middle-class suburban housewives, the story did grow to encompass all women from every age, race, sexual orientation, and gender. There were specific mentions of trans women dragoning as well. So overall, like I said, I really did love it. But I kind of felt like the second half of the book dragged out a little too long for me to be able to give it 5 stars. And it's been a few months now since I've read it, and really the only thing that sticks with me is not necessarily the story or what happened in the book, but just the beautiful writing and the incredible quotes, like my favorite, "All women are magic. Literally all of us. It's in our nature. It's best you learn that now." And because of that, I'm going to give it 4.5 stars instead of 5. And then we have Dreamer's Pool by Juliet Marillier. Blackthorn escapes wrongful imprisonment with the help of a mysterious fae, at a price, of course. In exchange for her freedom, Blackthorn must agree to make her way north to settle into a secluded cabin in Dreamer's Wood, where she has become the local healer, only using her gifts for good, and she is never to refuse a request for help for the next 7 years. Aided by Grimm, a fellow prisoner, Blackthorn is compelled to help the prince uncover the truth about his betrothed. 4 stars. I really enjoyed this one, though not necessarily for any of the stories or plot. I just loved being in this world. It felt very much like a fairy tale or folklore story. I solved the mystery pretty much in the very beginning, though there was a twist that was hidden until the very end. I didn't even mind that the magic of Dreamer's Pool was never explained. It just kind of existed, and normally I would hate that, but it worked for the story, and I'm okay with it. It just lended more to that fairy tale feeling. So overall, very enjoyable read. Moving into the weird zone, we have Bunny by Mona Awad. Samantha Heather Mackey is a scholarship student at Warren University, earning her MFA. She is a lonely outsider who has always preferred the company of her own imagination over anyone else, especially over her cohort of fellow graduate students who refer to each other simply as Bunny. But when Samantha receives an invitation to join the Bunnies for an off-campus workshop, she is inexplicably drawn to them, and once entangled into their group, she falls farther and farther down the rabbit hole. This was a really hard one for me to rate. I think I settled on 3.75 stars because I think I liked it, but I'm honestly not sure. It starts off pretty solid, and it just, as it keeps going on, it just gets more and more out of touch with reality, that by the end, I understood nothing. Absolutely nothing. My brain was mush. I didn't, nothing. I understood nothing, but somehow I was okay with it. I don't know. It was super, super weird, but in a very fun, wild, entertaining way. There was a very, very, very brief mention in passing towards the end of mental illness that I was really was hoping was gonna be an explanation for these things, but sadly it did not concretely go there, though I suppose you could make your own conclusions if you wanted to. But that was my only kind of, I like things explained, and I don't think Mona Awad is going to be an author that will ever give me that, but I still want to read more things by her. It's so weird. I don't know. That's it. I don't know. Next, we have These Violent Delights by Micah Nemerever. 17-year-olds Paul and Julian meet in their freshman year at university in the 1970s. Each boy has his own troubled past and views each other as their sole intellectual equal. They quickly spark a friendship that spirals into an all-consuming, intimate obsession they will stop at nothing to protect, even an unspeakable act of violence. I think this one would be probably 3.5 stars. I was never hooked on the characters or their relationship or their obsession with one another, but I was very intrigued by this act of violence. So the very beginning of the book opens up at the start of that act of violence, and even though we don't know exactly what's going to happen, I want to know what's going to happen. I wanted to know what was going to happen, but more importantly, I wanted to know why it was going to happen. I wanted to know what it was about these two boys, they're teenagers, they're boys, about them and their relationship, their obsession with one another, that would lead them to commit whatever was going to happen. Though that part I was really intrigued, and that's what kept me going through the story. I did give it that half a bump up to 3.5 stars from a 3-star, because the ending did surprise me. There was a twist that I did not necessarily see coming. So even though it was still pretty ambiguous as to what actually happened and how it happened, and not why. We know why it happened, but what and how. So, still pretty solid. Dark academia, if you like it, with no sort of fantasy element. Bunny was I think a dark academia as well, but definitely had more of a fantasy element to it. This one does not. Give the Dark My Love by Beth Revis. 17-year-old Netra receives a scholarship to study medicinal alchemy in hopes of curing a plague ravaging the countryside of her home island. But in her quest for a cure, Netra is lured into practicing the forbidden form of alchemy, necromancy. 3 stars. It was okay. That's not really a whole lot else I could say about it. It was a little too YA for my taste. Very insta-lovey, and it had like a lot of convenient, unexplained time jumps for the sake of moving the plot along, which I really don't like. It is part of a duology, I think, and I have no intentions of continuing. The Housekeeper and the Professor by Yoko Ogawa. A housekeeper and her young son befriend a renowned mathematician with a brain injury, which caused him to lose his short-term memory. 3 stars. It was a sweet, short little novella where life lessons were learned. I can't really say too much about it as it's less than 200 pages long, so anything else would pretty much just spoil everything. Full Disclosure by Camryn Garrett. We follow 17-year-old Simone as she learns to navigate life, sexuality, and dating as an HIV-positive teen. So another 3 stars. It was a much younger YA than I tend to enjoy. I think that this would be an excellent book for a younger reader, closer to the target audience, or someone who really has little to no basic understanding of HIV. But I am neither of those things. I have a very good understanding of the science behind HIV with my educational background, and then my cousin, Jessica, who I live with, is actually a case manager for people in our community with HIV. So I also have a very good foundational understanding of the social aspects of HIV. So for me, this book was mostly just info dumping of stuff I'm already pretty familiar with. And all I wanted was for them to just move on with the actual story. And then when it did, it was just kind of lackluster. So I think it's, a good book for someone who doesn't know a whole lot about it or is younger audience. But it just wasn't the best reading experience for me. Though still pretty, like I said, solid 3-star read. Light Changes Everything by Nancy E. Turner. 17-year-old Mary Pearl wants more out of life than to marry a man, bear his children, and keep his house. She wants an education. She wants to be an artist. But these things are hard to come by in the wild Arizona territory. So Mary was thrilled to be accepted to Wheaton College to study the arts, and even more pleased her parents allow her to attend. Over the next few years, we follow Mary's struggles and triumphs. So, 3 stars. It was okay. Mary had a lot of struggles throughout her life that were mostly the result of the time's stance on women and their rights, or lack thereof, really. And Mary fielded through those struggles with such strong will and determination that was far beyond that of her contemporaries. But I just felt like the writing style of this book didn't really do it justice. It was more of Mary's stream of consciousness, just rattling off her thoughts and feelings, more like she were writing a diary, but this book is written as a novel. I absolutely loved These Is My Words which is another book by this author, where we follow Mary's aunt, Sarah. That one is an epistolary written as diary entries, and I really think that Light Changes Everything would have greatly benefited from that format as well. Okay, I forgot to look up the pronunciation of the name in the next one, and you guys, we're having some times today. So, I dropped my phone. It's still down there. There's no one home. And our internet is, like, the last week has sometimes worked, sometimes doesn't work. So I don't really have a way of looking up the pronunciation of this right now. So I apologize in advance when I butcher. Okay, we have The Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Su Lin Tan. We follow Zhenxing, who has lived her entire life secluded in secret within the palace on the moon with her mother, Shangyi, the moon goddess, who was imprisoned by the celestial emperor for stealing his immortal elixir. When Zhenxing's existence is discovered, she must flee her home to save her life and the life of her mother. Thrust into the unknown, she must fight to free her mother from the emperor's hold. Alright, another 3 stars, but this one was a very disappointing 3 stars. I had such high hopes for this book. I thought I was really, really gonna love it. I thought it was gonna be a 5-star read. If not 5, at least a 4. But it just wasn't. I did enjoy the story well enough, and the writing was really nice. And I did enjoy it in the beginning, but I found as the story progressed, it felt like there were just too many things going on that were happening that it just couldn't keep my attention, because it was just one thing after another. And there were also large gaps in time, a lot of them, that were just conveniently thrown in to move the plot along. And in fact, a lot of convenient things happened, not just time gaps, but just plot lines that were just there, I think, to move the plot along. And I really just think that's pretty lazy, and I did not care for that. I also didn't have a connection or feel the connection between either one of the love interests, which was a pretty big flop considering a very large part of the plot hindered on those love interests and the connection between them. So, unfortunately, this one was a disappointment for me. The Ballad of Black Tom by Victor LaValle. Charles Thomas Tester is a hustler who will take any job to ensure he's able to provide for his ailing father. One such job is to find and deliver a dangerous book to a powerful sorceress. Only this job leads Thomas into a sinister plot to destroy the world. 2.5 stars. I really didn't care for this one very much. I'd honestly go along the lines of I didn't like it. I appreciated the atmosphere of Harlem in the 1920s, and I did really love seeing the city through Thomas's eyes. There were also many hitting quotes on racism during the Jazz Age that are still applicable today. However, there was also an overwhelming negative view of immigrants in this story from Tommy himself. So Tommy is black, and he was the one experiencing racism, as well as everyone in his community. But yet, he had the same negative thoughts and feelings to the immigrants in the city. So they may not necessarily be black, but be from other parts of the world. It seemed very counterintuitive. Didn't make a lot of sense to me. Don't know. And then we kind of move on to the plot itself, which it just kind of skipped all over the place, and there were so many plot developments that we had no part of. It was just jump, and this thing had already happened, and now we're in a new plot section. I don't know how to explain it. This is a very short book, so I can't say a whole lot. We were just kind of simply told this, like, if something were to change, we were just told, oh, this is how things are now, with no explanation of why or how they became that way. It was just there. I really felt like this book should have been a full-length novel rather than the short little 150-page novella that it was. I felt like I didn't have enough time to really connect with Thomas or his dad, and a lot of the plot really hindered on having a connection with those characters, so I didn't like it. Okay, and then we have two last books, which were the worst of the worst, because they were DNFs, ones I didn't even bother finishing. First up is Death Overdue by Allison Brook. This is a murder mystery set in a small town library. I gave up at about 10%. And in that 10%, we had a first encounter with a ghost with absolutely no shock factor whatsoever. It was just simply accepted, like, hey, I'm talking to a ghost. We had a promotion. We had a murder. We had a lucky real estate find. And we had not one, but two love interests. I was really hoping for more of that small town cozy atmosphere, but even that was a bust. Okay, and then lastly, we have A Study in Charlotte by Brittany Cavallaro. A Sherlock Holmes retelling following the great-whatever grandchildren of Watson and Holmes at a boarding school in Connecticut. So these two are framed for murder, and so they, of course, must do some investigating to clear the name, except no actual investigating occurred at all. None. It was just, things just kept happening over and over again. We weren't investigating them. We didn't know why things were happening. I mean, at one point they were literally stumbling over a body. Like, things just happened. And Jamie was, for whatever reason, in love with Charlotte. Even though this is the first time that they had ever met. They had never spoken to one another. They never wrote letters to one another. This is their first, when they get framed for murder, it's the first time that they have had any interaction with one another. And I realized, so I have no idea why he's in love with her. He was in love with her before he met her. And I have no idea why. And frankly, neither does he. And there was also Charlotte's rape. That might be a spoiler. I'll put a spoiler tag. Was handled very, very poorly. Even though it was a pivotal moment of them actually being framed for murder, of the plot, and it was just handled so poorly by every character. Adults, students, police, Charlotte herself. It was just, it was not okay. I almost read this entire book. I had less than 100 pages to go. And I couldn't do it anymore. So I didn't. And I have no regret. Alright, well, that was a very chaotic wrap-up. So if you're here, I thank you so much. And you should leave me a squirrel emoji, because there was a lot of squirrel moments. And again, I thank you so much for being here, and I hope that means I see you soon.